Survival was never supposed to be your permanent address. You know what nobody tells you about survival? That it has an expiration date. We treat survival like it's a forever home. Like once you've been through something hard enough, long enough, painful enough, that becomes your name, your title, the thing people whisper about when you walk out of the room. But I recently had the privilege of sitting down with Tawana Roberts, a woman whose life has become a living, breathing testimony to the truth that your past is not your prison and your worst season does not get to author your ending. Tawana has turned her story, a story that includes incarceration, homelessness, separation from her children, and the loss of everything she thought defined her, into a message of faith centered restoration that is changing lives and reminding women everywhere that healing is not just possible, it is promised. She is making the world better by showing women that they are not their worst chapter, that they are not defined by their darkest season, and that they are seen, they are loved, and they are worthy of a soft, joyful, peaceful life. And that conversation, it wrecked me in the best way because Tawana's message isn't just about bouncing back, it's about something deeper, something most of us are terrified to touch. It's about refusing to let trauma become your identity. It's about understanding that what happened to you is not who you are. And for those of us listening from the soft girl era, for those of us who have spent years in survival mode, carrying everyone, fixing everything, and forgetting ourselves in the process, this message hits different. Let me be clear, survival is not weak. Survival is necessary. Survival keeps you breathing when the world tries to suffocate you. But here's the thing we don't talk about enough: survival was never supposed to be forever, it was supposed to be a season, a chapter, not the whole book, not your biography, not your epitaph. And yet, so many of us, especially high achieving Black women who have been taught that rest is laziness and softness is weakness. We stay in survival mode long after the danger has passed. We keep the cape on. We keep saying yes when our body is screaming no. We keep grinding when our soul is begging for grace. And we call it strength. We call it loyalty. We call it faith. But what if it's not strength? What if it's just fear? Fear of what happens when we stop, fear of who we are without the hustle, fear of being seen as less than, fear of disappointing people who never once asked if we were okay. But Tawana's story and the stories of women like Shania Twain and Tanya Tucker remind us that real strength is not in the grinding. Real strength is in the releasing. Real strength is in the healing. Real strength is in saying, I survived that, but I will not be defined by it. Let's talk about Shania Twain for a second. You know her as the best selling female artist in country music history. Over 100 million records sold, a voice that defined a generation, a woman who turned pain into poetry and heartbreak into hits. But what you might not know is that at 22 years old, Shania lost both her mother and stepfather in a car accident, and she later said she was not allowed to grieve. Think about that. Not allowed to grieve. She had to keep singing, keep performing, keep surviving, because that's what we do, right? We keep going, we keep smiling, we keep showing up. Even when we're dying inside, even when our hearts are shattered, even when we can barely remember who we were before the pain. Shania was raised in modest circumstances in rural Ontario. She was recognized early for her talent and was taken to sing in bars as a child. A child singing in bars, already performing, already carrying weight that wasn't hers to carry. And when tragedy struck, when her parents died and she was thrust into a role she never asked for, she didn't get to pause, she didn't get to collapse, she didn't get to say, I need a minute. She had to keep moving, keep surviving, keep being strong. But here's what Shania teaches us: grief doesn't disappear just because you ignore it, pain doesn't heal just because you're busy, and success doesn't erase trauma. What it does is wait. It waits until you're ready to face it. And when Shania finally did, when she recentered her life around resilience, artistry, and recovery, she didn't just survive, she thrived. She became a lasting example of what it looks like to rebuild after loss, to grieve and still create, to hurt and still heal, to carry scars and still sing. And that's the first thing I need you to remember today. Your past is not your identity. What happened to you may explain part of your journey, but it does not get to define your future. You are not the sum of your trauma. You are not the worst thing that ever happened to you. You are not the season you barely survived. You are the woman who is still here, still breathing, still becoming. Now let's talk about Tanya Tucker. Tanya has been in the country music industry for over 50 years. 50 years. That's not a career, that's a legacy. That's a testament to endurance. And the Country Music Hall of Fame describes her as resilient and high spirited. But resilience over 5 decades, that's not luck. That's not talent alone. That's a choice, a daily, sometimes hourly choice to keep going, to keep evolving, to keep showing up, even when the industry changes, even when your voice changes, even when you change. Tanya was born in 1958 and entered the industry young. She built a career defined not by a single season of success, but by endurance, by showing up, by refusing to let one chapter define the whole story. And in 2023, she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, not because she never fell, but because she refused to stay down. Tanya's story reminds us that resilience is not about never falling, it's about refusing to stay down. It's about understanding that every season, every chapter, every version of you is just that, a version, not the final draft. And you get to keep writing, you get to keep editing, you get to keep becoming. You get to keep redefining what strength looks like, what success looks like, what a life well lived looks like. And that brings me back to Tawana Roberts, because Tawana's testimony is not just about what she survived, it's about what she chose after survival. She could have stayed in that chapter. She could have let incarceration, homelessness, and separation from her children become her identity. She could have let the world's labels stick. She could have let shame write the rest of her story, but she didn't. She chose faith. She chose healing. She chose restoration. And she chose to rebuild her life, not on the foundation of what was taken from her, but on the foundation of who she was becoming. Tawana's story frames hardship as chapters rather than identity. It shows a journey from brokenness toward wholeness. And the most important accomplishment in her story is not status or title, but the rebuilding of self, faith, and life after devastation. Her testimony helps listeners understand that restoration is not abstract, it is real, it is visible. It is possible for people who have lost everything and still choose to rebuild. That's the second thing I need you to hear today. Healing and restoration are possible, even after deep loss, even after disruption, even after rebuilding from the ground up. You can still become whole again, not the same. Whole is not the same as unchanged. Whole means integrated. It means you carry your scars, but they don't carry you. It means you honor your story, but you don't live in it. It means you survive, and now you get to do more than survive. You get to live. And here's where it gets tender. Here's where I need you to really listen. Because for so many of us in the soft girl era, we've been taught that faith is about being strong, about not complaining, about praising through the pain. And yes, there is power in that. But Tawana's story and the stories of so many women who have walked through fire and come out singing remind us that faith is also about surrender. It's about admitting you can't do it alone. It's about letting go of control. It's about trusting that even when you can't see the next step, there is a path, there is a plan, there is purpose in the pain. Faith can carry you through what strength alone cannot. And I know some of you are tired of being strong. I know some of you have been the strong friend, the strong sister, the strong mother, the strong employee for so long that you don't even know what soft feels like anymore. You don't even know what rest looks like. You don't even know what peace sounds like. But here's what I learned from Tawana: softness is not weakness. Softness is trust. Softness is faith in action. Softness is saying, I don't have to carry this alone. And that is revolutionary because survival mode teaches you to clench, to control, to carry. But your soft girl era, it teaches you to release, to rest, to receive. And that is not a downgrade. That is an upgrade. That is you finally understanding that you were never meant to do life alone. You were never meant to carry it all. You were never meant to be the cape and the hero and the savior. You were meant to be held, to be loved, to be soft. So, what do we do with all of this? What do we do with Tawana's testimony, with Shania's grief, with Tanya's resilience, with this message that our past is not our identity and healing is possible and faith can carry us? We take one step, just one. We refuse to name ourselves by our worst season. We stop introducing ourselves with our trauma. We stop letting our pain be our personality. We start speaking life over our story. We start choosing language that reflects who we are becoming, not only what happened to us. And maybe that step looks like asking for help. Maybe it looks like going back to therapy. Maybe it looks like returning to faith. Maybe it looks like repairing a relationship you thought was dead. Maybe it looks like starting over again. And maybe, just maybe, it looks like giving yourself permission to rest, to say no, to protect your peace without apology or explanation, to stop performing strength and start living softness. Because here's the truth: you don't owe anyone your survival story on repeat. You don't owe anyone access to your healing. You don't owe anyone a performance of strength when what you really need is a moment of softness. What you owe yourself is the truth that you survived, the truth that you're still here, the truth that your story is not over, the truth that you get to rewrite the ending. Tawana Roberts is living proof that restoration is not abstract, it is real, it is visible. It is possible for people who have lost everything and still choose to rebuild. And her impact on this world is not measured by what she survived, but by how she chose to live after survival. She is making the world better by reminding women that they are not their worst chapter, that they are not defined by their darkest season, that they are seen, they are loved, and they are worthy of a soft, joyful, peaceful life. So here's my challenge to you: not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when you've earned it, right now, today, right where you are. I want you to do something radical. I want you to take off the cape, put down the weight. Stop carrying what was never yours to carry. Stop surviving when you were meant to thrive. Stop performing strength when you were meant to experience softness. Stop letting your worst chapter write your ending. Your past is not your identity. Healing and restoration are possible, and faith can carry you through what strength alone cannot. So refuse to name yourself by your worst season. Take one concrete step toward healing. Speak life over your story. Choose language that reflects who you are becoming, not only what happened to you, because you are not your trauma, you are not your pain, you are not your worst season. You are the woman who survived it. And now you get to live. Now you get to rest. Now you get to be soft. Now you get to choose joy. Now you get to reclaim your peace. Now you get to rewrite your story. And this time, you get to be the author, not your pain, not your past, not your trauma, you. So step into your soft girl era. Let your next chapter be written not by what you survived, but by who you are becoming. Because the world doesn't need another survivor. The world needs you, whole, healed, soft, and free. And that is your birthright. That is your promise. That is your future. Now go claim it,